I never thought 3 little words could cut me so deeply. You're obsessed. That's what my boyfriend said to me, like I was some kind of crazy person just because I wanted to spend more time with him. It hit me like a slap in the face. I remember standing there, my mouth open, staring at him, trying to understand if I had actually heard him right. Obsessive? Me? Was it really obsessive to ask the person you love to make time for you? Was it so much to want dinners together, conversations that lasted longer than a few minutes, or even a lazy Sunday where we did nothing but exist next to each other? But the way he looked at me, almost like I had done something shameful, made me second-guess everything. And that's where the story begins. Because those words weren't just careless. They weren't just a thoughtless reaction. They were the tip of an iceberg, a massive, ugly reality I had been ignoring for far too long. When he called me obsessed, it forced me to stop and wonder, how did we get here? How did the man I cared for so deeply start seeing me as nothing more than a burden, or worse, someone he had to escape from? In that moment, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just about that one argument. It was about everything building up before it. The ignored phone calls, the excuses, the dismissive jokes about me being clingy, the way he brushed off my feelings like they were inconveniences instead of real emotions. And here's the part that stings the most. I believed him, at least for a second. I actually stood there thinking, maybe I am obsessed. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I should just back off and stop expecting so much from him. That's the power of words when they come from someone you love. They twist inside you, planting seeds of doubt that you water without realizing it. But let me be clear, this isn't a story about me being too much. This is a story about someone who gave their heart to the wrong person, about trust that was taken for granted, about love that was never really returned the way it should have been. And if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were asking for the bare minimum and somehow being blamed for it, then you already know where this is heading. I want you to picture this with me. You're standing in front of someone you've shared secrets with, laughed with, dreamed with, someone you've made sacrifices for. You're looking at them with nothing but the hope that they'll give back even half of what you've given. And instead of love, or warmth, or even a shred of respect, you get dismissed with a single word. That word haunts you. It loops in your head at night when you're trying to fall asleep. You replay the conversation again and again, thinking of what you should have said, or how you should have defended yourself. But deep down, you know it's not about that one fight. It's about something much bigger, a pattern that has been unfolding for months, maybe even longer. When he called me obsessed, I laughed at first. A sharp, bitter laugh that didn't feel like me. But my chest was tight, my eyes burned, and I couldn't stop the shaking in my hands. Because I realized in that second, I wasn't crazy, I wasn't obsessed. I was just tired of being treated like an option. And as much as I wanted to run from that truth, I couldn't. So here's the story of how it all unraveled. When I look back, I can't deny it. The beginning felt magical. We met in the kind of way that makes you believe in timing. I was at a friend's housewarming party, standing in the kitchen, awkwardly balancing a plate of chips and pretending to check my phone, when he walked in. He had that kind of smile that made you feel like the only person in the room. He introduced himself with easy confidence, and within minutes, we were laughing like old friends. That night, we talked until the party ended. He asked me questions about my life, what I wanted for the future, what made me happy. Nobody had ever made me feel so interesting before. And when he walked me out to my car, he said, "I feel like I've known you forever." It was cheesy, but I believed him. From there, things moved fast. The texts came constantly at first, good morning, good night, little check-ins during the day. He wanted to know what I was doing, who I was with, what I was eating. At the time, I thought it was sweet. I thought, finally, someone who actually cares about me. The first few months felt like a dream. We had spontaneous dates, grabbing late-night ice cream, taking long drives just to talk, even staying up until sunrise once, lying on his living room floor, making plans for the future. He made me feel chosen, special, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. But here's the thing about looking back. Hindsight makes everything sharper. The moments I thought were signs of love were sometimes just signs of control. The questions he asked weren't always about caring. Sometimes, they were laced with suspicion. The way he wanted to know who I was with didn't feel like interest anymore. It felt like keeping tabs. Still, I ignored it. Because when you're in love, you convince yourself that little red flags are just misunderstandings. You tell yourself that every relationship has quirks, and that maybe you're the one overthinking. For months in, we moved in together. It wasn't planned in the traditional sense. His lease was ending, and he suggested we take that next step. I hesitated, but he made it sound like the natural thing to do. Like we were building something real. And a part of me was flattered. If he wanted to live with me, it had to mean he was serious, right? My parents raised their eyebrows when I told them. My mom even said, "Don't you think it's a little soon?" But I brushed it off. They didn't see the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel wanted. I told myself they just didn't understand. The first few weeks of living together felt exciting. We built IKEA furniture, argued over where to hang pictures, laughed about whose turn it was to do the dishes. It felt like a glimpse into the life I always wanted. Domestic, comfortable, full of small, ordinary joys. But slowly, the tone shifted. He started coming home later. The text messages became shorter. The conversations we used to have about everything turned into half-hearted responses, mumbled over his phone while scrolling through social media. And when I asked what was wrong, he'd shrug and say, "Nothing. You're just overthinking again." That's how it started, the gaslighting. Subtle, disguised as casual comments, but sharp enough to make me doubt myself. Every time I tried to voice a concern, he turned it around, making me feel like I was the problem. I wanted so badly to hold on to the version of him I fell in love with. The man who walked me to my car that night. The man who stayed up with me until sunrise. The man who once made me feel like I was everything. I told myself he was just stressed, that work was hard, that this was just a phase. But deep down, I already knew. Something had shifted. And I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that the love I thought we had wasn't as solid as I believed. I stayed, though. Because when you've invested your time, your heart, and your home in someone, walking away doesn't feel like an option. You cling to the hope that things will get better. You rewrite their behavior in your head, softening the edges so it doesn't hurt as much. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The signs were all there. But at the time, I was blinded by love, or maybe by the fear of losing it. And that's what made the cracks so much easier to ignore. At first, I thought the distance was just temporary. Everyone goes through phases, right? Maybe he was stressed about work, or maybe the excitement of moving in together had simply worn off. That's what I told myself as I watched the man I loved slowly turn into someone I barely recognized. The shift was small in the beginning, almost unnoticeable if you weren't paying close attention. Instead of texting me good morning like he used to, he started sending quick one-word replies hours later. Instead of planning dates, he'd say, "We'll see," and then disappear into his own world. Instead of sitting next to me on the couch, he'd retreat to the bedroom with his laptop or his phone. And every time I tried to bring it up, the same conversation played out. "Hey, is everything okay? You seem distant." "I'm fine. You're imagining things. Or worse, you're being dramatic again. Can't you just relax?" That word, dramatic, became a weapon. He used it like a shield, shutting me down whenever I dared to express how I felt. And each time he said it, I shrank a little more, questioning if maybe he was right. But the truth was obvious. We weren't connecting the way we used to. And it wasn't just in the little things. It was in everything. He started canceling plans at the last minute, always with some flimsy excuse. I dress up, put on makeup, wait by the door for him to be ready, only to hear him say, "I'm too tired. Let's just do it another time." The first few times I brushed it off. But after the fifth or sixth, the rejection stung like a punch to the chest. One Friday night stands out in particular. We had planned a dinner date, something simple, just the two of us. I had been looking forward to it all week. I even cooked his favorite pasta dish, lit candles, tried to make the night special. He walked in, glanced at the table, and said flatly, "Oh, I'm not really hungry. I grabbed something on the way." I stood there, holding a bottle of wine I had just opened, my heart sinking. All that effort, all that hope for connection, tossed aside like it was nothing. I wanted to cry, but I forced a smile instead. That's okay. I lied, even though it wasn't. Moments like that piled up, one on top of another, until I felt like I was carrying the weight of the entire relationship on my shoulders. And then came the jokes, the ones that weren't really jokes. If I asked him to watch a movie with me, he'd smirk and say, "You're so needy." If I wanted to talk about my day, he'd roll his eyes and mutter, "Here we go again." Once, when I asked him why he never said, "I love you" anymore, he laughed and said, "Do you need me to say it every 5 minutes?" That's exhausting. I laughed along sometimes because it was easier than starting another fight. But inside, I was breaking. Every sarcastic comment chipped away at me, making me feel smaller, weaker, less worthy of love. The intimacy faded too. He stopped holding my hand in public. Stopped reaching for me at night. Stopped looking at me with that spark in his eyes. I'd catch him scrolling on his phone, his face lit up by the screen, smiling at something, someone I couldn't see. And when I asked about it, he'd brush me off. "You're paranoid. Stop snooping." That's when the gaslighting became impossible to ignore. He twisted every concern into an accusation against me. If he forgot to call, it was because I expected too much. If he ignored me, it was because I was being clingy. If he flirted with other girls right in front of me, it was because I was insecure. The worst part was that I started to believe him. I began apologizing for things I didn't even do, just to keep the peace. I walked on eggshells, carefully choosing my words, afraid that anything I said would set him off. I stopped asking for dates, stopped asking for affection, stopped asking for anything because every request was met with a sigh, and I roll, or silence. And yet I stayed. I stayed because I remembered the man he used to be. I stayed because I thought if I just loved him harder, if I just tried harder, things would go back to the way they were. But the harder I tried, the further he pulled away. One night, I caught myself staring at him across the room, wondering who he really was. Was he the sweet, charming man who once made me feel like I was everything? Or was he the cold, dismissive stranger who now made me feel like I was nothing? The answer was obvious, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. So I told myself what so many people in my position tell themselves. This is just a rough patch. It'll get better. But it didn't. It only got worse. And I was about to learn the hard way that sometimes the cracks don't disappear. They spread until the whole foundation collapses. It happened on a night I'll never forget. We had been invited to a friend's birthday party. One of those gatherings where everyone dresses up, music fills the room, and people laugh a little louder than usual. I remember standing in front of the mirror that evening, carefully choosing my outfit. I wanted to look nice, not just for myself, but for him. I told myself, maybe tonight will be different. Maybe tonight, he'll actually hold my hand, smile at me, and remind me why I fell in love with him in the first place. But deep down, a part of me already knew this night would be just like the others. When we arrived, he immediately drifted toward his friends. He was laughing, clinking glasses, and telling jokes, while I stood by the side, pretending to be busy on my phone. I kept waiting for him to notice me, to introduce me, to even just glance in my direction. But minutes turned into hours, and the distance between us only grew wider. At one point, I gathered the courage to walk up to him. I touched his arm gently and whispered, "Hey, do you want to come dance with me?" He looked at me as if I had just embarrassed him in front of the whole room. His voice, sharp and loud enough for others to hear, cut through the music. "God, can you stop being so clingy? You're acting obsessed again." The word hit me like a slap. Obsessed. People nearby turned their heads. Some smirked. Others looked away awkwardly. And there I was, standing in the middle of the crowd, holding back tears, feeling my heart shatter into pieces. I wanted to disappear. I managed a weak smile, mumbled something about needing air, and walked out. My chest felt tight as I stepped outside into the cold night. The sound of laughter from the party echoed behind me, but I felt completely alone. For the first time, I couldn't excuse his behavior anymore. It wasn't just a bad day, or him being tired, or me overthinking. It was real. He had humiliated me. And worse, he didn't even care. A few minutes later, he came outside, not to comfort me, but to scold me. "You always make a scene. Why can't you just let me enjoy myself? You're suffocating me with all this neediness." His words twisted the knife deeper. I tried to defend myself, my voice trembling. "I just wanted to spend time with you. I just wanted to feel like I mattered." But he rolled his eyes, muttered something under his breath, and went back inside, leaving me standing alone in the dark. And in that moment, something inside me broke. The illusion shattered. The man I thought loved me, the man I believed cared for me, he wasn't there. Maybe he never was. I stayed outside for a long time, my arms wrapped around myself as the night grew colder. And as I stood there, I realized that the person I was fighting for wasn't really fighting for me. He never had. That night wasn't just another argument. It was the breaking point. The moment I finally saw the truth for what it was: raw, painful, undeniable. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. The night of the party haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear his voice calling me obsessed, sharp and cruel, cutting through the laughter of strangers. I could still see the looks on people's faces, the smirks, the awkward glances, the way they watched me stand there, humiliated. For a while, I kept replaying it in my head, wondering if maybe I really was the problem. That's the dangerous thing about being with someone who constantly dismisses you. Their voice starts to become your own. His words echoed inside me, convincing me that maybe I was too needy, too emotional, too much. But in the silence that followed, something began to shift. I started remembering the girl I used to be before him. The girl who laughed easily, who had dreams and passions, who didn't second-guess every single thing she said. Where had she gone? When had I allowed someone else's opinion to erase who I was? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Love wasn't supposed to feel this way. Love wasn't supposed to break you down, make you question your worth, or make you feel invisible. Love was supposed to lift you, to make you feel safe and seen. And I realized I hadn't felt safe or seen in a very long time. The turning point didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It came in small waves, like light slowly breaking through clouds after a storm. A quiet morning when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the tired, sad eyes staring back at me. An afternoon when I caught myself scrolling through old photos, remembering how happy I once was before all of this. A night when I lay awake and admitted, finally, that I deserved better. It was terrifying, but also freeing. For so long, I had clung to the hope that things would change, that if I just loved him harder, if I just stayed patient, if I just silenced my needs, he would finally see my worth. But now, I could see the truth. No amount of waiting or hoping would turn him into the partner I needed. The only person who could give me back my worth was me. I began noticing the toxicity in little things I had once excused. The way he never asked how my day was. The way he laughed at my feelings, as if they were a joke. The way he made me feel guilty for simply wanting love. All those small cuts had been adding up, leaving scars I hadn't wanted to admit were there. And suddenly, I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry. Angry at him, yes, but also angry at myself for staying silent for so long. That anger, though painful, was also powerful. Because buried inside it was a truth I had been too afraid to face. I had the strength to walk away. I started imagining life without him. A life where I didn't have to shrink myself to be loved. A life where I could laugh without fear of being mocked. A life where my heart wasn't constantly aching for scraps of attention. The thought scared me, but it also gave me hope. And with every passing day, that hope grew stronger. I wasn't ready to leave just yet, but for the first time, I could see the path ahead. A path where I chose myself. A path where I stopped begging for love from someone who never intended to give it. This wasn't the end of the story, but it was the beginning of my awakening. The moment I finally began to realize that I was not obsessed. I was simply a woman who loved deeply, and who deserved to be loved in return. And if he couldn't give me that, then maybe, just maybe, it was time to walk away. The shift inside me was slow, but once it started, there was no going back. I couldn't unsee the truth anymore. I couldn't unhear the words he used to tear me down, or unfeel the loneliness I carried even when he was right beside me. For weeks, I wrestled with the decision. Part of me still wanted to hold on, because letting go meant admitting that the person I thought would love me forever was never really capable of loving me at all. But the other part of me, the stronger part, was tired of waiting. Tired of begging. Tired of hurting. The final push came one evening when he came home, barely looked at me, and went straight to his phone. I sat across from him, watching him scroll, laugh at something on the screen, completely ignoring my presence. And in that moment, it was like something inside me snapped. I realized that this silence, this distance, this emptiness, was my life with him. And if I didn't leave now, it always would be. So I stood up. I walked into the bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, and started packing. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing, but I kept going. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. The sound of zippers and drawers opening was loud enough. When he finally noticed, he looked at me, annoyed, like I was disrupting his peace. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice flat. And for the first time in a long time, I looked him in the eye and answered with strength. "I'm leaving. I deserve more than this." He scoffed, tried to dismiss me the way he always had. Called me dramatic. Said I was making a mistake. Tried to twist it into being my fault. But his words no longer had power over me, because I finally believed in my own worth. Walking out that door was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most liberating. Each step felt heavy, but also light. Painful, but necessary. It wasn't just leaving him behind, it was leaving behind the version of myself that accepted less than she deserved. The first night alone was quiet. Too quiet. But for the first time in a long time, that quiet wasn't filled with tears or self-doubt. It was filled with peace. A fragile peace, but peace nonetheless. In the weeks that followed, I began to heal. I reconnected with friends I had pulled away from. I spent time doing things I loved, things I had forgotten about. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the broken version he left me with, but the strong woman I was becoming. And the biggest lesson I carried with me? Love should never make you feel small. Love should never make you doubt your worth. Love should never demand that you lose yourself just to keep someone else. If you're listening to this and find yourself in a similar place, questioning your worth, silencing your needs, shrinking to fit into someone else's definition of love, let my story be a reminder. You deserve better. You deserve love that feels like home, not like a battlefield. I used to believe that asking for time, asking for effort, asking for love made me obsessed. Now I know the truth. It made me human. And walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of finally writing it on my own terms.